Rest in peace, Fueled by Ramen. Maybe a deep dive. Disclaimer, all of this is speculation. Nothing has been confirmed by Fueled by Ramen or their artist. For context, Fueled by Ramen is an American record label under Warner Music Group as a subsidiary of Atlantic Music Group, with a focus on alternative rock music. They started as an indie label in 1996, joined a Warner umbrella a few years after under Atlantic. Moved to be under Elektra in 2018, and then Elektra merged back with Atlantic in 2024. Bro, this is so fucking messy. This is so messy. Now, I don't know much, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. I don't know that much about like the record label side of things. What I do know is most labels are actually under the bigger guys. The big guys usually buy out of competition, or if they willingly join, it's for all the capital those big guys have. Okay, so it's basically like you're the little bro of this guy, and this guy is like El Chapo. He got the bread, and yeah. So it feels kind of like a fucking pyramid scheme in a way, where it's like you got the big guy who is funding the little guy who is funding the littler guys, which are the bands. Basically, the bigger guys buy up smaller labels. I've had a couple offers on my label. Ooh, okay. Okay, it's okay. The big ones are Universal Music Group, Sony Music Entertainment, and Warner Music Group. I know like most of my favorite bands, I know who they're signed to, right? And I know how like the relationship between a band and a label works, but I don't know the relationship between a label and the bigger guy. It looks like Pure Noise isn't owned by any of the big guys, which is pretty cool. Which makes sense, right? I feel like a label, if you're like in the punk realm, if like you're letting a bigger label buy you, you're kind of contradicting your ethos. You know what I mean? You have several options. They buy it and leave everyone in their places, or just supply money, or you can fully sell it to them and they take it over. So the intentions of the big guys buying out the small guys is literally, okay, like, hey, small fella, here's a shitload of money. Let us buy you and we get a percentage of X, right? I'm assuming that's how it goes. I should do like a deep dive into like how record labels work. But anyway, so yeah, clearly Fueled by Ramen is getting like tossed around with other like fucking record labels. Anyway, so it's low-key was a waste of time, but this is important. Fueled by Ramen signed artists such as Fall Out Boy, Panic, Paramore, 21 Pilots, and a bunch of other 2000s emo and emo adjacent artists. So what prompted this post? On April 3rd, Chloe Moriando announced that she was independent for the first time after signing to Fueled by Ramen years ago. She had released 3 albums under the label, which is a pretty normal contract length. More on this later. I have the music industry version of Gay Guy Brainworms, and I had noticed that several other artists had left the label in recent memory, so I decided to check out their current roster. After doing that, I noticed something interesting. So I guess this is the roster. We got the Front Bottom, Soft Launch, Panic, 21 Pilots, Meet Me at the Altar, 1OK Rock, Grandson, Games We Play, Fall Out Boy, Days Your Grenade, All Time Low, Chloe, and A Day to Remember. Bro, do you guys know who Games We Play is? Do you know this guy? I don't know. I feel like Games We Play kind of blew up out of nowhere, but not many people know who he is. He's a plant? Yeah, that's what I figured. Maybe I'm talking out of my urethra, but he literally came out of nowhere. Like, I caught my brother listening to him. I'm like, oh, who the fuck is that? Right? And it's rare, extreme. Like, this is probably the only time where my brother's listening to a band and I don't know who they are. And, like, apparently this guy's, like, pretty fucking big. Okay, now what is the interesting thing? For a record label under the Warner umbrella, this list is small. Well, I feel like a lot of record labels recently have just had, like, a pretty small fucking list. I don't think that's too out of the ordinary. I did also remember that several artists listed had left the label, so I cross-checked the artists with their most recent releases label, and this is what I found. A Day to Remember, no new music since March 2025. All Time Low, no longer under the label. Chloe, no longer under. Days Your Grenade, still under Fueled by Ramen, more on them later. Fall Out Boy, no new music since 23. Games We Play, no longer under Fueled by Ramen. Grandson, no longer under. Meet Me at the Altar, no longer under. Holy shit. Okay, so this is their site, but essentially what they're saying is like most of these people aren't really even signed by Fueled by Ramen. They're just on the site. One OK Rock, no music since February of last year. Panic on hiatus. Soft launch inactive for over a year. The Front Bottoms no longer under Fueled by Ramen. 21 Pilots. Wait, what? 21 Pilots no longer under Fueled by Ramen. Their contract was fulfilled with Breach. What? I didn't know that. So according to their roster, they have one active artist, Daisy Grenade. I decided to check their Instagram and I found more stuff that was interesting. Daisy Grenade is scheduled to release their EP, So Much to Say, on May 15th. It looks like this exclusively a digital release with no physicals being listed for sale at all. This is their first project being released under the label after being signed in 2023. Whoa, that's weird. 2 years? You've been signed with Fueled by Ramen and you didn't release Dick? What? You've been signed for 2 years and then you're finally going to release something and it's a digital EP? As all they've released are 11 singles in their 3 years with the label. Looking at the caption of the announcement post, they said this. Okay, that makes more sense. We're moving into this next phase of Daisy Grenade with immense gratitude. So lastly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for supporting us. You make our art possible and our dreams a reality. We love you more than you know, and we can't fucking wait for you to hear these new songs. Okay. Next phase, huh? Also, when I was trying to see if there was a physical release, I looked at their link in bio and found that they started a Patreon in December. If you are signed to and getting supported by a major label, you usually don't need a Patreon. This leads me to believe that they are getting jack shit from the label, and this, coinciding with the stuff surrounding their EP, makes me think that this EP is getting put out as a way to get them released from their contract. If you're still with me, I have one more example of why I think that Fueled by Ramen is in trouble. 21 Pilots has been one of the label's flagship artists for a decade at this point, after getting signed in 2012. They have the highest RIAA album certification in the label's history, Blurry Face, which is 6x Platinum. Their albums routinely peak in the top 3 in the US, and they actually still release music and tour. Their latest album, Breach, actually went #1 on the Billboard Top 100, and it was also their last album in their contract. There's been frustration from fans due to the label's apparent lack of promotion, which is weird. I feel like Fueled by Ramen has like some of the best promotion in the game. It feel like for a time it felt like if you were signed to Fueled by Ramen, you made it. You're done. You don't got to worry about shit. They got you. So this is kind of strange. And also because of how the tour for Breach went, Breach was released less than a year and a half after Clancy, their previous album. Before this, the duo had been on a pretty consistent 3 years between album releases. Well, okay, like I said, that was a double album though. So that like makes sense to me, right? So a new album cycle this soon was pretty unprecedented. Their tours are also usually much more expansive, but the Breach tour ended up being a 1-month US plus Toronto amphitheater tour, which is one of the cheapest ways big artists can tour, and a festival run for Europe. This seemed like a way for 21 Pilots to fulfill their contract as painlessly as possible, and now the biggest artist active on the roster is gone. Fueled by Ramen was on a home run from the early 2000s until the late 2010s, but it seems like their time may be up. Besides Rico Nasty moving from Atlantic to Fueled by Ramen for her album Lethal, and I'm not sure how much actually changed, as Spotify has it listed as being under Atlantic, there hasn't been new artists signed for a while. Outside of the Daisy Grenade EP, Breach was the last new music released under Fueled by Ramen, and that was in September. With all of the restructuring going on at their parent label, it looks like, at least to me, Fueled by Ramen is well on its way to being shuttered and going defunct any day now. I feel for the artists who were signed to the label in recent years, but I'm glad it seems they were able to leave without it being a nightmare. Record labels overall have been in turmoil since the rise of streaming, and I wouldn't be shocked if more subsidiary labels head this direction. Everyone gets jack shit from the label. It depends. And this goes without saying, like, labels kind of only treat their artists that are like killing it like really well. Like, excuse me, it feels like if you're not absolutely killing it already, labels kind of put you in the back burner as like a side project. Like, yeah, we'll get to them. We'll get there. Because the artist that does well keep the label open. Granted, there's obvious favoritism. Yeah, of course. And it's like, if one of your projects are fucking killing it, why would you not put your focus on it? I get that. But if you're like the Front Bottoms and you're like, oh man, this is huge, we're signed to Fueled by Ramen, but then they're not helping you with dick, it just feels like an absolute spit in the eye. It's like, okay, why are we signed to you if we're in the back burner and we're seeing no love? You see what I'm saying? It's like we might as well stay fucking independent and have our creative freedom. Labels play favorites. If you're not hot, you can be potentially shelved for years before you're allowed to release again. Yeah, and it's bullshit. It's so that like here's the thing. In today's age, it really does feel like you don't need a label to be successful, and we do see that time and time again. Most of the bands we listen to not sign. But the like realistically what a label can do for a band is like, okay, I get to make if you can get a decent like deal, right, where you have the creative freedom and the label is literally just like financially backing you and doing the marketing, good deal. Good fucking deal. But if it's like you're on a fucking leash, right? It's like a very tight, short leash. It's like, yeah, you barely have creative freedom. You barely have a say in like when you could release this and that. Yeah, we'll get to you. You could come to our studio months and months later, even though you're ready now, right? Like that sucks. That's ass. You know what I mean? And it's like at that point, I might as well sign to like a shitty like label that, while sure it's not as poppin' as like Fueled by Ramen, but at least I have that creative freedom and at least I get to do what I want. This is some strong analysis. Wouldn't surprise me if the label is being shuttered and a few artists left are either renegating, I don't know what that means, to move somewhere else under Warner or just being released. Wonder what's gone down behind the scenes. Industry gaze reading this, get on your burners and spill. Now, you know, something interesting to me, right? Victory Records, we were just talking about them. Before they shut down, they had a fuckload of bands and almost all of them broke up after Victory Records shut down. Somebody said this recently, actually, so I'm gonna steal what they said. Victory Records was cool because what they did was give like the more experimental bands a chance, right? Like they were a hub for like easycore. No one was signing easycore bands because they didn't sell, right? But Victory did. I feel like their motivation is probably a little iffy, right? Because it felt more like, okay, A Day to Remember's easycore, they blew the fuck up into this like massive band that everyone loves. We're looking for our next A Day to Remember. Give us all the easycore bands. That's what I felt like went down. But at least the easycore fellas got a chance. You know what I mean? Is Fueled by Ramen cooked? Don't know. I don't know. And I kind of want to look more into this. I hope they're not, right? Because the benefit of Fueled by Ramen, right, is like they do represent our scene, right, for the mainstream, right? Like I know a lot of people don't want their bands to go mainstream or get this like massive success, but you know, I feel like not every band thinks that. I think a lot of bands want as much success as they can. And I think Fueled by Ramen was a really good bridge from the underground to the mainstream.